Good afternoon, everyone. I know everyone's still coming in, but for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and start the program of today. Thank you for joining us for day 3 of our symposium on the circulation of art, markets, and new institutions. Today, we have a specific program, but before I introduce that, let me start by thanking Abu Dhabi Department of Culture and Tourism, Dial Ansebe, the Director of Art Fairs specifically, and the Art Fair staff, Michelle, Renaud, and Mary V. And of course, would love to thank again our wonderful students, volunteers, Valentine and Kristalina. Today's program really aims at introducing emerging artists in the region to steps of how to actually build a career, whether it is through the workshops that we have lined up after this, and we have wonderful people leading them. If you're interested in that, or if you know any artists who want to know how to enter this, the market, please send them to the sessions that you see in front of you, the group session leaders for emerging artists. And at the moment, we are lucky to have a group of 3 very inspirational speakers who will be telling us about some of their own experience and how that would be useful. I have the pleasure of introducing the first 2 speakers, Dr. Sam Bardaouil and Fellrath, who are internationally recognized independent curators and academics. They are founders of Art Oriented, a multidisciplinary curatorial platform based in Munich and New York. They are chairman of the Mont Blanc Cultural Foundation in Hamburg and affiliate curators at the Martin Gropius Bow in Berlin. Bardaouil and Fellrath have held teaching positions at various universities, including the London School of Economics and New York University. They are award-winning authors and editors of numerous publications with contributions to a broad range of academic journals, books, newspapers, and art magazines. Over the past decade, Bardaouil and Fellrath have jointly curated numerous critically acclaimed exhibitions, including Art et Liberté, Rapture, War, and Surrealism in Egypt, 1938 to 1948, When Process Becomes Form, and staging film, Tea with Nefertiti, Muna Hatoum, actually a long list of exhibitions. These exhibitions have been shown in renowned museums and institutions worldwide, such as the Centre Pompidou in Paris, Arter Space for Art in Istanbul, Reina Sofia in Madrid, and so on. And the Tate Liverpool, Villa Impan in Brussels, and K20 in Düsseldorf. They, at the moment, actually have their exhibition Ways of Seeing in view at NYU Abu Dhabi Art Gallery, which I recommend everyone to go see. In 2013, Bardaouil and Fellrath were the curators of the Lebanese National Pavilion at the Venice Biennale, and they are the curators of the UAE Pavilion for the upcoming Venice Biennale in 2019. I will invite now Sam and Till to come up on the podium to talk. We will have the introduction of our second speaker after that, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end for everyone together. Thank you.
What did he say? Hello, is this working? Hello, welcome everybody to our talk. Sam and I want to give you a little bit of an overview of our work at the Mont Blanc Cultural Foundation, which was set up 27 years ago. And we have 2 main programs which we use to support the arts and artists in particular. On the one hand, we have an artist commissions program. When we joined the foundation, we decided that we don't want to buy existing works by artists for the collection, but instead actually give artists the opportunity to create new works. And these works are shown, as we will later see, in biennales or museum exhibitions. So this is a program where we very directly give the artists the opportunity to create new work and engage in a particular topic with a particular curator. On the other hand, we find it's very important not only to support the artists, but also support those people that support the artists. So for 27 years, The foundation has been running a program called the Arts Patronage Award. It has been awarded a total of 300 times now. The foundation has given more than 5 million euros of prize money to the patrons and their specific organizations in over 25 countries. Every year, when we come to selecting the award winners, we work with a system or a global network of 50 nominators around the world. These nominators consist of museum directors, curators, critics, collectors, sometimes artists themselves, who are all based and have a great knowledge of the different art networks and the art world in the particular countries where we're looking to support. Finally, the selection is made in an annual meeting. Sam and I meet with a board that we initiated 2 years ago. We call it our Curatorium, and it is a five-member board of esteemed colleagues and friends of ours. On the one hand, we are working with Jochen Volz, the director of the Pinacoteca in Sao Paulo, as well as the director of the Perez Art Museum in Miami, Franklin Sermons. We have Kim Sun-jung, the director of the Guangzhou Biennale in South Korea. We have Jean Deloisy, the president of the Palais de Tokyo, and finally Anne Barlow, the director of the Tate and St. Ives. So as you can see, this is a global network, and we're doing this quite intentionally because we do not think everybody can know everything about every part of the world. So we try to make a very comprehensive decision that goes really quite in depth when it comes to selecting, on the one hand, the patrons and the art organizations we are supporting, as well as the artist commissions. So I think now we will go a little bit into the two programs and give you some examples and how we believe we can actually make a difference in the arts world by those two programs. So.
Thank you, Till, for the introduction. So, we're going to first talk about the Arts Patronage Award and give you examples just from the last 2 years since we've become the chairman of the foundation of some of the patrons and the respective organizations that we have awarded. And I will start with Jose Roca, who's the founding director and still the managing director of an amazing artist residency program in Bogota, in Colombia. It's called Ars, Flora and Natura. And for almost 15 years now, Jose and his wife and a team of artists and curators have been putting together this program whereby an artist is invited, they're given a space for 1 year to work and develop projects that they're interested in. And sometimes they exhibit, sometimes they don't. There's no pressure on the artist to create a final product. It's more about engaging in a thinking process that allows them to develop their practice. And you can see the space. So it's really one of the great projects that we wanted to support, and that was in 2017. Another project which we thought was very, very important, and I think some of you might know of it because it operates in what we refer to as the Global South, is Video Brazil from Brazil in Sao Paulo. And the director and the person who has been running this program for almost 30 years now is Solange Farkas. And Solange, for those who know her, is an extremely passionate, dedicated person who might not come from wealth, but has definitely given so much for this initiative to happen. And over the last 30 years, she has made it her mission to be able to locate video artists working all over the Global South, from places like the Gulf, Lebanon, Africa, South America, Asia, and give them opportunities to produce new video art, new films, and show them in this big festival that they do every 2 years in Sao Paulo. Now, you will notice when you look at these examples that our definition of patronage is not really operating along the more conventional notion that a patron is someone who necessarily just gives money. You know, you go to a lot of museums and you see a name of someone on a building, you know, and it means that they gave $20 million, $100 million, $5 million, or they have a private collection that they amassed and they make available to the public. While this is, of course, very, very commendable and very much needed, our definition of patronage with the foundation is going more towards also recognizing people who have given time, effort, ideas, money, have built something lasting that is not just a one-off initiative, but a project that continues over so many years and that benefits a lot of artists. So for instance, Here we have another great example. I'm sure some of you know these people in person, Nadia and Rajib Samdani from the Dhaka Art Summit. Some of you might have been to the Dhaka Art Summit in Bangladesh. We were there for the last edition, and it's phenomenal how much this summit founded by Nadia and Rajib is doing to support the local art scene by bringing curators, museum directors, but also production money for artists to develop new works and exhibit them. So it's a fantastic, fantastic initiative, and I think the next edition will be already the sixth edition. So, or the fourth edition. Another great example, we just, gave an award to Sandra Egedus. Sandra is originally from Brazil, but she's very much based in France and Paris for many years. And she started almost 15 years ago the SAM Art Projects. It's very interesting that it's called SAM Art Projects. It was a double celebration when we gave her the award. But it's truly, truly phenomenal. You see here just a few thumbnails of some of the artists that have been awarded through this project. So she focuses on supporting artists from South America and allows them the opportunity to present work specifically in principle at the Palais de Tokyo in Paris. So artists from all over South America get the chance to come and do a residency, and then they show the work in an exhibition at the Palais de Tokyo in Paris. And here we're looking at another phenomenal project. For many years, Claire Su and Johnson Chang, I couldn't find the picture of Johnson, so I just used the picture of Claire, have started the Asia Art Archive. And if you know, this is perhaps the biggest archive that focuses on modern and contemporary art from all over Asia. And they have more than 50,000 holdings that have been put together through the dedication and hard work of these two individuals and the team that they have worked with over the years. So we just gave them an award. And perhaps one thing to say here, again, that connects to our idea of how we are working with the foundation. You see that there's a lot of different geographies represented here. Now, when we first took on the position of chairman, we realized that most of the activities of the foundation were based in North America, in Central Europe, and sometimes a little bit further. And we felt that if we were to be in sync with the nature of contemporary global artists, contemporary global artistic production, we have to go out and bring in all the different models that are operating in so many different parts of the world that we can also learn from. So it's not always about doing things in the same place again and again. It's about decentering the center and, deflating this notion of periphery, which some of you know is very central to the work that we do in our curatorial practices as well. I'll give you one or two more examples and then I'll hand over to Till. Joshua Okon, he's an artist himself, and 9 years ago he started again a brilliant residency program in Mexico called SOMA, and it came out from a place where artists felt they didn't have a space where they could meet and talk and reflect on their practice. So him and many other Mexican artists like Carlos Amorales, Santiago, and other artists from different parts of the world, they decided to create this place for artists to come and spend almost 2 years now. It's a 2-year program for them to learn about artistic practices and develop their projects. So perhaps still you can continue talking to us about some of the...
Yeah, I think when you look at some of these diverse examples, what is very important to note on the one hand is the diversity in terms of what these patrons have created. I don't think there's one single model of patronage that is really applicable in each and every single context. So what we're trying to do very carefully is to identify what really matters in a particular city or in a particular region or in a particular country. So each of these programs, what they have in common is that they truly fill a gap. So they're always basically doing something that nobody else is doing, whether it is giving artists the opportunity to travel, whether it is creating an archive where you can read and study about art, or whether it is really just directly engaging with them and lending them a hand as they are trying to reach their full potential, whether it is in education or in simply executing a particular artwork. I think it's also very important to note that the foundation, we are giving each of these organizations also money so they can support their activities, launch a new initiative, and we actually hold these events quite publicly. And the main goal and the main objective with that is also to shed light on them. So many times it happens that even in your own city, you don't know what's actually going on just in another neighborhood. So very often people don't really know what the possibilities are within their own countries. So we hope very much that the people not only start engaging in their programs, but maybe also start donating. So we make a public appeal and hope other people start funding and supporting these organizations in ways that they can. Or indeed, many people that have the means don't necessarily engage in a philanthropic way. So we also wish and hope, and this is the appeal that we make in each and every one of our award ceremonies, that many people follow the examples of these leaders in their community and support the arts where it is most needed. And here we have a wonderful example in the US. We just came from New York, where we held the ceremony for Laura Donnelly. It is a phenomenal organization. She has been supporting artists directly for more than 30 years, really very much under the radar. Many people don't even know her. The artists definitely know Art Matters, but she was always really very much in the background. And for 30 years, the organization has simply been giving seed money or a fellowship to artists. The typical amount is around $15,000 at the moment, and the money is given without asking any questions. So it is not done for a particular project. The artist does not have to say what they do with this money. There is no reporting involved. It is simply a sign of trust and encouragement. Of course, there are a lot of applications for this program, but what is so wonderful about it is that there are a group of people who each year select a number of grantees that are getting that pat on the shoulder and say, look, we believe in your work, we support you, and we wish you good luck. And that is such a wonderful sign of encouragement. You know, in cases it helps artists pay the rent, buy materials, what they need, but the trust is simply given in the artist that they will do what is actually most needed to them. Then we've given our first award in the Middle East region this year, rather, to Zaza and Philip Jabre for the Jabre Foundation in Lebanon, Beirut. I think many of you are familiar with them. They are pretty much one of those go-to people in Lebanon, in Beirut, often when it comes to funding artists, whether it is for a participation in the Biennale. They did support also many years back the Lebanese Pavilion, but they support also pretty much every initiative that you can think of in Beirut, from the Beirut Art Center, from production of artworks and so on. So it's also one of those few people that really actually make things happen in a place like Lebanon on a private level, where there is in fact no support from the government.
And here they supported Primary Documents, the book that MoMA just published.
I think this is the final example, or is there two more? Catherine Pettigas, two more. Catherine Pettigas is a philanthropist based in London. She originally comes from an investment banking background, same as her husband, but she always says she felt one investment banker is enough in the family, and she's been dedicating herself 100% to her arts project. She's also a scholar herself, has published many books, and also supports a project called Fluxus Art Projects, which facilitates direct artist exchanges between the UK and France and directly works with artists. We can finally round off with one of our patrons in Asia, Choi Young Chung, Paradise Culture Foundation in South Korea, is also one of those private initiatives that directly enable artists to show and produce their works both in Seoul and in Incheon.
So now we'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Artist Commission Program, which is the other main activity that we oversee with the Mont Blanc Cultural Foundation. And historically, the collection, the Mont Blanc has an art collection that they've also started around 20 years ago. And it always worked with artists that were still kind of on the cusp of making their breakthrough. Some of them were relatively known, some of them were completely unknown. And it was always, a commission in a sense. They would ask artists to create a work for the collection. So some of the artists that are in the collection are the likes of Monica Bonvicini, Liam Gillick, Thomas Demand, Jorge Pardo, names that perhaps you're all familiar with. So we took this model and we decided, as Till said at the beginning, that we do not want to spend the money that is available for the collection on going to art fairs. We are in an art fair, and buying artworks in the secondary market. We actually want to use the money in order to enable artists to produce new work that they need to produce and they don't have any support for. Plus, it should be a work that will be seen by the public within the context of a museum exhibition or a biennial, so the public can also benefit from seeing the work, the artist can benefit from the dialogue with the public, and then the work moves to the headquarters of the foundation in Hamburg. So we reinitiated the project for the first time in 2017, and we supported two wonderful artists, Isai Rodriguez and Catherine Nunez, for the main exhibition at the Venice Biennale, Viva Arte Viva, that was curated by Christine Massel. And they did a beautiful library project, like a bibliothèque, where they created all the books, all the newspapers, all the stationery, all the posters, the magazines, through embroidery and crochet and textile work. So it was a very interesting kind of exercise in looking at their memories, but also kind of looking at femininity and systems of sharing knowledge. What's really fascinating, though, is that the grant allowed them to be able to come to Venice, install the work, and it was lovely to see them buy a lot of artworks, art books, and go back to Manila in the Philippines, where they come from, because they run an art center. So there was an added benefit from them being able to kind of somehow be there. Perhaps still you want to talk about Mercedes?
Yeah, so a little bit the grantees or the people that we try to support are all people where probably nobody else would simply give them the support. So there's often a lack of a cultural foundation that enables them to produce the work, or maybe there is no gallery behind it, or simply their work in media that normally it's difficult to find support for. And here we work with a lovely young artist, Mercedes Dorame, for the Made in LA exhibition at the Hammer Museum in the United States. Maybe we can just go through each one of them quickly. Then Ruby Amanze, she created a lovely drawing installation for the Sao Paulo Biennale this year. She's originally of Nigerian descent, but has been living in New York for many years. And then finally we have Emmanuelle Lenné, a wonderful artist based in France, and she just created a wonderful installation for the Hayward Gallery in London, where she distorts spaces and recreates installations again on photographic wallpaper and plays with that space. So I think what they all have in common really is that not only is there an element of direct involvement by another curator, so we are not working with these artists directly, so we rather want to facilitate an existing dialogue between a curator and an artist. So the benefit is, on the one hand, the exhibition, it's the institution that benefits, it is also the artist that benefits, and then finally the part of the commission is that the works get purchased and then are, in the end, being brought back to Hamburg, where the collection is based.
And perhaps just to wrap up with one or two points, I think one of the very important things that we realized we want to do from the very, very beginning when we joined the foundation, we looked at a lot of other models, and we realized that perhaps most of them, if not all of them, have built their practices on the model of legitimization by bringing everything to a center. So you build a big museum, a big foundation space, and everything goes there. The activities are there. The work is there. In our case, we're doing it the opposite way. We're going out to all these amazing places, more and more added every year, where things are happening already, and we're trying to use the resources of the foundation to enable things to happen where they are indeed happening, so the impact can be felt locally, and that the kind of networks are also enhanced locally, and the artists, the curators, the institutions in that particular context can benefit, and the infrastructure can somehow we can contribute to that advancement of that infrastructure.
Perhaps one last concluding remark. I think our vision for supporting the arts is one that is probably much more on a long-term sustainable path rather than a quick PR stunt. So all the models of patronage, and this is really where we're trying to move towards very strongly, have that element of a longevity to it. So they're not really based on a vanity project, but all the patrons have really dedicated a substantial amount of time to really making things happen directly, so to speak, on a grassroots, on the grounds level, directly with these artists. So what we're hoping to establish also over the next years is that as we move along, we can create something as a perhaps best practice model, or as we see is the best practice model of arts patronage. So one that is based on true engagement and are really directly enabling artists to reach their full potential, on taking risks, and on simply enabling them what they can do best, and that is just go crazy and not follow any rules in their work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was inspirational. Thank you. And our second inspirational speaker I'm happy to introduce is Khulood Khaldoon Al Atiyat, who joined the Salama bin Hamdan Al Nahyan Foundation in 2013 as a manager of the Arts, Culture and Heritage Program. In this role, Khulood is responsible for the planning, execution, and oversight of a number of the Foundation's flagship arts, culture, and heritage initiatives, including the Salama bin Hamdan Emerging Artist Fellowship, and representing the Foundation in its capacity as Commissioner of the National Pavilion UAE Biennale in Venice, which our first inspirational speakers will be curating. She also provides strategic support to other initiatives on an as-needed basis and frequently represents the Foundation at arts and cultural events in the UAE. Please join me to welcome Khulood on stage. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join me for the talk today. So the title of the talk that I chose is A New Path, and you will know why on the next slide. But it will be a talk about the Salama bint Hamdan Emerging Artists Fellowship, as it's commonly known in the UAE today as SEEF. I will be reading the next set of slides because I believe it's important to stop at some of these words and quotes. Helped me pave a new path. It has given me confidence in what I do. It has made me rethink how I critique art. It made me a happier person. It gave me an irreplaceable artistic community of friends and colleagues and helped me with my path to graduate school. Allowed me to reach a higher understanding of my own practice. After SEEF, I decided to pursue a career in art and became a full-time artist after receiving my MFA. Pushed me to quit my job and pursue art more seriously. SEEF gave me the opportunity to go to grad school as a step to becoming qualified at teaching at the university level. SEEF also provided me with a community of peers that I consider to be my immediate community at a professional and social capacity. SEEF provided the beginnings of critical dialogue around content, context, and studio practice within the United Arab Emirates, as well as recognition of my status as a long-term expat whose work is in dialogue with the UAE's environment. Introduced me to the value of critical discourse within the Middle East and helped me find my passion towards academia and education as a career. Highly grateful for such an experience. This program made a significant progress to my art practice due to the studio practice, supportive SEEF community, and professors from the Rhode Island School of Design. Thank you. I just wanted to say, in case I didn't say this before, that SEEF was the best thing that happened to me. And finally, this is one of my favorite quotes. It grew my understanding of a creative practice exponentially. It made me realize that I want to and can and enjoy being a creator of complex content and not only a consumer and appreciator. It introduced me to a community that will forever be my family. Individuals that for the past 4 years have been friends and mentors and advisors on all things art, literature, culture, and personal. It fostered an environment where my cohort became so supportive, critical, and crucial to the growth of each of us as individual artists that we continue until now to hold very regular online meetings to talk about our work, get critical input and support. SEEF was my bridge to grad school, not only financially, but also academically and critically. It helped me clarify why, where, and what I wanted to do grad school for, and linked me with some of the most incredible women and mentors. Now, every one of these quotes have been said by a different person. It's not one paragraph that I chopped up into pieces. And this is only a sample of 13 out of 72 people who have gone through the program now. But why do we do this? Why was SIF created? What is the Salama bint Hamdan Al Nahyan Foundation interested in? So this is the mission of the foundation, which is to invest in the future of the UAE by investing in its people. And through the program, the goal of the program, or how we invest, is by basically investing our time, efforts, as well as financial investment in those who are interested in a career in the arts, be it as being artists or people in the management of the arts field. So we thought, before we create a program, we need to understand where are the gaps. And to understand where are the gaps, we had to create focus groups with emerging artists. And so we held these focus groups and brought together artists from across the United Arab Emirates and asked them a set of questions to try and understand where is the need. We did not want to assume as a foundation that we understand it all or that we know what the artists in the United Arab Emirates need. So this was the result, which was a bit daunting, to be honest with you. It was a bit scary to know that there were many results, by the way, but these are the 4 common things that kept coming up. Lack of affordable studio spaces, lack of constructive critique, lack of community of peers, and a lack of rigorous fine arts education. I think studio spaces are kind of understandable. Most people turn their homes into ad hoc studio spaces. Others try and rent out spaces, but they're quite expensive. And I'm not going to, of course, dismiss some of the spaces that do provide great studio spaces, but there are very few. There's, spaces like Tashkil in Dubai are great. The Sharjah Art Foundation provide wonderful spaces. But there aren't many Tashkils and there aren't many Emirates Fine Arts Society and Sharjah Art Foundation that provide these spaces. Constructive critique, we're a very nice community. We're people who like to just compliment most of the time and avoid difficult conversations. But critique is not about taking it personally. It's not about telling you your work is not good. It's about helping artists move from a space or a place where they're stuck into understanding their practice better and moving forward. So anyways, that was really daunting, as I said. We asked ourselves, where do we even start? And this really is kind of how we felt when we asked ourselves that question. So we thought, okay, those are the 4 elements. Affordable studio spaces, we can definitely do as a foundation. We can find spaces, we can build spaces, not an issue at all. Community of peers, by bringing these people together through a nomination process and a selection process, we'll create that group. But we understood that we do not have the knowledge to provide constructive critique, nor develop a curriculum and a pedagogy for this program. So this is where we went out and did some research and found the Rhode Island School of Design. And I promise you, this is an image that pops up when you Google search RISD. So what is SIF today? SIF started in 2013, and now we just actually finished the first teaching week of cohort 6. Let's talk about the studio life. So we provide studio spaces that have workshop facilities within them. They also provide individual studio spaces for the artists within a communal space. Whoa. We also have kind of like a conference room area where we conduct our presentations or lectures. The fellows go through workshops with the faculty, ranging from things such as casting and mold making, some basic wood shops, examining kind of mold making through materials that they maybe never were introduced to before, such as alginate in this case. Again, working together and pouring the alginate and making sure that it's the right consistency, it doesn't freeze over too soon, working with materials such as plaster as well and creating 3D objects. We also examine fruits and vegetables very closely and critique them. They use these for their casting projects as well. We even used pineapples, ginger, some oranges, and these prompts are basically just asking the fellows to bring in whatever they want, and for some bizarre reason, everyone was thinking of food on that day. And then was the element of critique. Critique is one of the most important aspects of the program today. Fellows talk about their work, they talk about the context, they talk about the scale, they talk about color, they talk about the medium, they talk about it from many, many perspectives. And the faculty are really there to provide that constructive critique to them, as well as provide the fellows with a language that can allow them to critique each other when the faculty are not there. So they receive the critique from their faculty mentors. Sometimes they give them death stares, but eventually they do agree with them as well and smile back at some point. We also realized that in critique, for some reason, there's a hand gesture that has to be demonstrated. Critique doesn't work without this particular hand gesture. Community. What happens when the faculty are not there? The faculty, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but they're there only 4 times a year, for 1 week each time. So for 10 months, which is the length of the program, there are big chunks of time when the fellows are alone in the studio, but still support one another. They provide feedback, technical support, support each other in realizing their projects, sharing some references, as well as maybe sometimes just watching some TV shows on Netflix. But it's really important that they support one another throughout the journey. These are just some images from the trip in the States. And what happens here, when you spend 2 weeks, which is the length of the period that we go to the United States, with the same group of people, wake up, do all of the workshops with them, studio visits, museum visits, a beautiful friendship develops. And really, if you talk to anyone who's been through the program, and I can notice some of the fellows in here, this trip is a turning point to many of them in terms of developing their relationships, but also understanding where their practice goes next. Now, the rigorous education part, and this is one of the elements that we're so grateful to our partners from the Rhode Island School of Design for. And it's difficult to really talk about rigorous education through images because it's part of the curriculum, it's part of what happens, but let me describe quickly the format of the program. It's made up of 10 months, starting in November and ending in August, by the end of August. The faculty from RISD come to Abu Dhabi 4 times a year, spending 1 week each time in sessions 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. with the fellows. We go to the States for 2 weeks, where we visit the Rhode Island School of Design, the graduate show, attend graduate critiques, and visit museums and artist studios while we're there as well. And then there's an online component that runs throughout the program for 10 months. So online journal recording, responding to prompts, readings, that's another kind of educational element. And on a monthly basis, they hold video conferences with their faculty in the United States. So the program is delivered through many different mediums, and throughout those 10 months, the studio spaces are open 24/7 to them. We provide them with the materials required for them to realize their work. And we also have a studio manager who's present in the studios, and that is his full-time job, which is to support them in the technical aspects, but also act as sort of a mentor to the fellows. And I think that one of the best ways to talk about the results of a rigorous education program is through some images of the work. And still, it doesn't do it complete justice, but these are some examples of work being developed in the studios and ideas being developed in the studios and then coming into full fruition at an exhibition which we hold at the end of the program at Warehouse 421. Again, experimenting with materials, testing material, pushing a material, and seeing what can you get from it. Playing around with clay and seeing what it looks like in an exhibition setting. This is an idea that emerged during the program and at the exhibition. So this is just a bit of a sample of what the program does. So really, the program is about asking fellows, what is your why for engaging in an art practice? And it's also about asking us as practitioners in the field, what is our why? Because it's not only about the artists, it's about the artists and it's about us who are creating these platforms or these spaces for them. So whether you're an artist in this room or an aspiring artist, an emerging artist, or a practitioner, I really encourage you all to stop and ask yourself, why are you doing this? What is the goal? What pushes you? What motivates you? And I mean, throughout my journey at the Salama Foundation for the past 5 years, there have been many moments that gave me the why or reminded me of the why. But very recently, one of my colleagues and mentors, Dr. Pradeep Sharma, shared a poem with me that I thought was very, very powerful and really represents a lot of the why. And it's a work by the artist Tim Etchells, and I'll read it out to you just to close my talk. I meant to write to you that art can close a wound and open a legal case, that it can stare further than a telescope, go faster than the internet, and beat like a loved one's heart. I wanted to tell you that art is loved as a hammer because of how well it breaks lies and speaks truths. It can say something, many things, any things, can say much or little in the best of thing, in the best way of things. And I think it has value not always bound up with price. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for the great talks and the great programs and all the efforts that you do. For the sake of time, maybe Salwa, do you have a comment, question that you'd like to make, or would we, yes, just open up? Yes.
Yeah, I first want to thank you all for very truly inspiring talk, I'm sure, for artists and for all of us. And also thank Salama Foundation in particular, because what they're doing also feeds into what we see in the art scene here. And also we have a very good relationship with the Salama Foundation. What I mean, we is in New York University in Abu Dhabi. And that's also part of the educational process as well. And my question has to do with the high school and the curriculum K-12. Are you planning, or do you have currently any projects that engage these students before they graduate?
So that's a very good question, and I think is an area that definitely needs a lot of work when it comes to the arts in its kind of general aspects, not just the fine arts, but everything from music to performing arts and the fine arts. Design also kind of in its general area. The K through 12, though, at the moment at the foundation, we don't have any programs that are strictly directed towards the K through 12. However, we also understand that when it comes to programs in the arts or institutions in the arts, it's very important that entities don't always duplicate each other's work and allow actually for these entities to support one another. So for instance, the Department of Culture and Tourism, the education department at the Department of Culture and Tourism has a wonderful team that works exclusively on K through 12 arts education and enhancement of the curriculum of K through 12 education. So we're very aware of the programs that they are conducting and the activities that they're doing. And we believe that it's better to kind of work in kind of parallel to each other and complement each other's work. So have each entity focus on a gap area. So we're at the moment focusing on this moment between undergrad and graduate school. So we're neither, of course, an undergrad program, nor we are a graduate degree program, but that stepping stone to help artists who are taking the practice seriously, help them be able to get into graduate level. Even though I said that, we were approached recently by the Ministry of Education, who are developing programs for K through 12 and particular in government schools as well. And they have asked for the foundation's feedback and support and collaboration on the efforts that they're doing. So this is literally kind of in the early stages of the conversations. We've met with them a couple of times now, and so hopefully our feedback can help in their programming rather than us creating a separate program on our own. So supporting existing efforts and seeing where we can add or enhance those in those areas.
A quick question to Sam and Till. I know you go around looking for programs and the efforts that they're putting in certain around the world in certain disciplines and different criterias. Just sort of out of personal, of course, desire. When you're looking at the Middle East and the Arab world, are you able to figure out more programs in places like, let's say, in Iraq, in Syria, in Jordan, in Palestine? Are you able to coordinate with official entities, or you try to work out a different way? I mean, just if you would give us some idea about a little bit about that, that would be great.
I think there's not just one model or one answer to the question, because it depends on where we're looking and the country where these organizations happen. For instance, I think if you're looking at the Gulf states, for example, the UAE, there's a lot of private initiatives and private foundations, but then there's also a lot of great examples of public foundations that are supporting artists and creating projects that are making an impact and filling a gap. So, in a sense, you are bound to somehow work with someone who is coming from a public background or private background. In other places where the funding or the government support is unfortunately lacking, you realize that almost every case of patronage and every case of support is coming from a private individual. And in that case, in a way, we're not really in need to kind of work with a governmental institution. Till?
Yeah, I mean, what's quite interesting is I think now that we're talking about the Mont Blanc Cultural Foundation, this is in fact something that we do alongside all of our own curatorial projects, so very often we find that there is a certain merger, in fact, when we're working on exhibitions, we see models and we kind of engage in a more kind of eclectic way. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to separate who directly we engage in, but I definitely would echo what Sam is saying. It depends very much on the specific context, and I think that's also the power of the program as we see it in the long run, is that there can be a mutual learning, and in fact many of the award winning organizations that we are supporting financially start to interconnect, and we are starting deliberately to make exchanges, and I think that's a very powerful model in the future. That I don't think there's one good way of supporting the arts, and it's certainly not always an advantage when you have a government funding the arts, but it's also not an advantage when the government is not doing it. I think you need a pluralistic approach. You need different kind of ways of supporting the arts. They all need to work together, and things certainly change over time. So only because there's government.
We need support for artists and for the arts in general, but specifically emerging artists, which is something that, the reason why Salwa and I put this together is recognizing that many of the young artists really have no idea how to sort of start. So maybe for a closing final words, maybe if you have few words of advice to artists who, even if they're not here, this is being recorded.
I have to say that I really liked your presentation a lot, Khulood, and what you were saying and what sort of has been lacking, those 4 aspects. I think that's a very, very honest analysis, and I can only congratulate you for being so outspoken about that, because I think you put the finger on the wound, and not necessarily just only in the Emirates, but you can take that slide and apply to many, many cities and many places. You know, only if you look at spaces, for example, in cities like New York or Paris, London, Berlin, spaces are expensive. And you know, when an artist is starting out, and even if they're advanced in their practice, even if they have a gallery behind them, that does not mean that those are the ones that make millions and can afford to be around. I think those critical 4 points that you gave about critiquing a safe environment, rigorous education and spaces apply to everyone, and I think it's always extremely important to be very mindful of that, and it's a long, long process, and it takes a lot of these elements to enable artists to do that, and I think that's the crucial thing, you know. It comes down to always enabling artists and giving them that safe space where they feel they can develop their practice, and enabling them in their process and make sure that they can excel at what they do and really question the world, and this is irrespective of the environment they work in, and just make sure they go further. This is absolutely a great summary slide, I think, what you present.
I have a question.
One thing that I'll add to this also is if there's a piece of advice, one of the things I think that is very easy to happen when you're starting as an artist and an emerging artist, regardless of your age. I mean, emerging is not about the age really, it's about where your practice is at. That sometimes people can be distracted easily by all the opportunities that come their way, and get distracted by the commission here and a commission there and an exhibition here and a gallery there and the fairs and all of that, where they don't really spend much time thinking about their practice and just taking the time to dig deep into their practice and understand their practice so well. And that's, I think, one of the things that people realize when they go through the program is taking 10 months to do work for the sake of doing work. The exhibitions didn't come until later into the program, and it actually happened kind of accidentally in a way, to be honest with you. We were putting up the work for final critiques at Warehouse 421 because the spaces in the studios were not big enough. And we thought, oh, they actually look good in the space, so we kept them and people came and saw them and they loved it. But we're also changing this now. We're pushing the exhibition outside of the program and doing it at a later stage because we don't want exhibitions to distract people. So when you're just starting and trying to understand your practice, take the time to make work, walk into your studios and just make for the sake of making. Not for the sake of your commissioner or your client or your gallery, but just to express at the end of the day. Someone, I think, had a question.
Yeah, I had a question. Sorry. In a way, I see...
I can't see you, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
In a way, I see what you're doing as like 2 different directions of the same thing. Like Sif works on incubating local talent and takes it to the world in a sense, or has an exchange with the world, and Rizdi. And what Sam and Till are doing, I think, is you're somewhat globe-trotting curators who are open to the world, and then you take from the world and put something in a very site-specific format that relates to the local surroundings. So it's like 2 different directions of a similar narrative or a similar way of operating. And my question is for you both, Sam and Till, how are you going to take this, let's say, global imaginary in the way that you approach the art world, the contemporary art world, as being very universal and being very local at the same time in your work with the UAE National Pavilion? I don't know if it's too early to talk about it, but that's like burning right now, so I had to ask it.
I mean, I'll give you a very general and evasive answer. But basically, what connects perhaps what we do or our approach, which I think you expressed very beautifully, I think I'm going to plagiarize what you said in the future, is that, and in a way very similar to what Sif is doing, is that I think both approaches are very artist-centric. A lot of that's the bridge between the local and the global. At the end of the day, it boils down to a talent, to someone who deserves and requires support to be able to reach their full potential, whether it's within the context of a biennial exhibition, whether it's in the context of pursuing an MFA and doing the best that they can, regardless of what the context is, whether it's also seeking out all these patronage programs, all these organizations that we support. Indirectly, we are supporting the artists that benefit from these projects or these organizations. So I think in the back of our mind, and perhaps because we are curators, we are educators, the artist is always at the center, is always the focal point, and whatever we do in our exhibitions, in the work with the foundation, in any presentation really, we try to create a platform where the voice of the artist can be heard in kind of dialogue with whatever curatorial narrative or vision we are trying to put forward. So it's about preserving the integrity of the artist and allowing them to be heard for what they want to say. And that's what we try to do with the foundation, and that's what we try to do with everything else.
I mean, I think actually, yeah, well, that didn't quite answer necessarily to give you what specifically you wanted, but it's a good answer.
Soon.
But I also want to say that we really, I think it is very important to also show appreciation to those patrons who may be in some place where they're working on their own and no one, they need a, sort of a pat on the back. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for the three of you for the work you do in supporting the artists and the programs, and we wish you great success.
Thank you.
And
thanks for having us. Thank you.
Just to say,
sorry.
that because you mentioned that, I think the very unique thing about the Mont Blanc Cultural Foundation is that it's the only foundation that we know of, and we've done a lot of research, that has a program dedicated to the recognition and support of those people who work behind the scenes, while every other foundation we know of is either geared towards institutions or artists, so it's just a little note on the side.
I just want to say, along the same lines, when we look at the Salama Foundation, it's actually royal patronage of the art, and it will be around about now. About now. Right, so if you're interested, thank you.
And then we have a film at 5 here in the auditorium, The Price of Everything, that everyone should see. Please tell everyone else to come here, and the producer of the film is here, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. Thank you very much.